I lived my life as a Muslim for a good amount of years, and then I left. And I just wanted to share my perspective because um, I think there's a great amount of like ex-Muslim stories where people have left, and these people were born into Islam, but there's also a percentage of people and who convert to Islam and actually leave. But the Islamist propaganda is kind of like they like to pretend that so many people convert to Islam and then their lives are so much better. And look, I believe that probably is a case that some people have converted to Islam and they are very happy with their decision, and they feel it was the right choice for them. But I wanted to share my story of how I felt that the decision I made was completely wrong. And it did negatively impact my life. I didn't find peace in it, and I ended up leaving. And I just want to share my experience, really, and the reasons why I decided to leave, but also the reasons how I entered into the faith, because that's also important to discuss, because not everyone enters into a religion for the right reasons. And it's something that I think should be avoided. This person happened to be a Muslim from a Muslim background. They told me that Islam was the answer to all of my problems. Everybody kept telling me it's because of the West why I had all these issues. And I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go for it, because that's a different story. But at some point, I guess I got brave enough to kind of sit there and say, hold on, let me actually look into this. Because sometimes when you're like, I don't know, when your mind is telling you something isn't right, it's usually because something is wrong. I kind of just got brave enough to ask myself, like, is this actually true that, like, dogs are some sort of bad thing that prevents angels from coming in? And I found myself kind of going down this rabbit hole of researching it and seeing that this was, I guess, a sound hadith, and it was the genuine consensus that dogs cannot live in the house. So something happened in me, which was like I had two conflicting beliefs, and I couldn't hold both of them at the same time in my mind. So on one hand, I had this life experience knowing that dogs are life-changing, like they actually make people's lives better in so many ways, and they have helped human evolution. They were the first domesticated animals. So that was something I actually knew to be true. I had experience of that. And then on the other hand, I had the kind of so-called verbatim word of God and the example of the best man ever telling me that these animals were not to come in the house because they prevent angels from coming in. And at this point, I guess I had to give up one belief set. And if I gave up that belief about dogs, and there were many things like this is just one example, but if I gave up that belief on dogs, it was almost like I was lying to myself and I was deluding myself, like gaslighting myself. And I thought, you know what, I can't. So I was like, either one of these are not true. And I had, as I said, I had many problems like this. When I found out about the marriage to Aisha, who was a child, once again, there's no way you can justify it. So once again, if you say like, well, this example, is wrong, the whole thing falls apart. Obviously, I had no one to talk to about this in real life. I had no one to ask all these questions to, all these doubts I was having. So I went onto YouTube, I went to the internet, shake Google, and I decided to type in, did Prophet Muhammad really marry a 6-year-old child? And that's how I discovered the ex-Muslim community and figures who were so vocal and outspoken about these same doubts I had, but they had the answers and they had the proof. And then I started discovering even more stuff that the Prophet had done in his lifetime. And I just started to that profile of the perfect man really started to fall apart.